Hey everyone, it's time for another review finally because I finally beat another game. This is for Final Fantasy Remake, not Rebirth. I finally played Remake. I never did because I, I think I alluded to this in the Uncharted video, but I never really played PlayStation games and I didn't care that much about Final Fantasy. I had tried to get into it multiple times at the point that Remake came out, and I wasn't a huge fan. Like, I had started 7 original at this point, I had started 8. Um, I had bought 15 and never even opened it. My only real experience was Final Fantasy 13, which people say is the bad one, but that's the one I have the most memories of playing because I had it when I was like 12. Um, but now I finally got around to playing it because I loved Final Fantasy 7. And Rebirth was just coming out. I got Rebirth for my birthday back in April, and right away after I got Rebirth, I ordered Remake because I wanted to experience that for myself because I hadn't really been spoiled on much that Remake had to offer that was different from the original. And I played it, and this is actually a fun experience for me because it's my first time playing a single player game with my girlfriend where we both are experiencing it for the first time. I've been showing her like Xenoblade and stuff like that where I've played it and she hasn't, and I'm more getting her reactions. Where this is almost even more special because I've played the original Final Fantasy VII, so I know a lot of the plot points, and she's never played a Final Fantasy game before ever. So it was a unique experience. And honestly, the first time I booted up this game, I would get like full chills, like because it's like seeing the iconic opening now like fully realized was incredible to me. And like special moments like meeting certain characters for the first time, like Tifa and Aerith, I would get like goosebumps. Like, I'm someone who gets really invested in my characters and my story-based games, and I really love how much more fleshed out the characters are, especially the Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge, because it felt like they were just kind of there and then they died to die. Sorry, spoiler alert. Whereas now in Final Fantasy VII Remake, you actually get attached to them. They have a backstory and you do quests for them and stuff like that. And they really build on their character a lot more. And that's a running theme that I'm noticing with that and Rebirth, that a lot of the characters that have really minor roles in the original now are way more fleshed out. And I really, really like it. It's hard for me to review Final Fantasy VII Remake having played the original because it almost feels like a tech demo, like a really bloated tech demo. Like, it's no joke. I played for 30 hours. I saw pretty much everything there is to see in a first playthrough. I eventually want to go back and beat it on hard mode and platinum the game. But getting to experience, like, specifically Wall Market, like, you could just feel that this was the original vision and they were limited by the hardware, and it's finally fully realized, and it was super cool. The combat is super immersive as well. I like my turn-based battle systems, but I kind of sit on the in-between of liking and disliking them because I grew up with Pokemon. I grew up with like the baby turn-based battle systems, so I'm used to it, but it is rather slow. And the main reason I was able to get through 7 in the first place was because the like new updated version on the Switch has the speed up feature. That's pretty much the only way that I was able to get through it without suffering a little bit. And the combat in this one feels very fluid. Some of the boss fights feel a little bloated, like HP sponges, I guess you could say, where it felt like they just took forever for no reason. Like, they weren't hard, it was just more of an endurance test than anything else. But a lot of the boss fights I really liked, and once I got used to the combat and actually involved myself with it, I really appreciated how different each of the characters played. Like, you have Aerith as the long distance mage, you have Barrett as the long distance gunner, or you can even give him weapons to make him up close like a brawler, but those weapons kind of suck because he's extremely slow using them. Cloud is your basic attacker. Tifa I really liked playing as because she's a very button mashy character, and it made me feel like I was just playing a fighting game, like mashing square and then pressing triangle every so often to use the super move. I really enjoyed it. And just how unique each of the characters' like abilities are and how you can build them up was super cool. And I'm excited to see what they do with other characters in Rebirth because there's a lot more. I don't necessarily know who's playable other than Red and Yuffie. I haven't got I've started Rebirth with my girlfriend. She's not here anymore. She left to go back home to be with her parents for a bit over the summer, but we saw Yuffie. We got to the point where she appears in the plot, but not to the point where she joins the party. And Red, I enjoy using him, but he's just kind of another melee character. Now that I've kind of gotten used to his like vengeance mode stuff through, like while she's not here, I haven't been progressing the story. I've been doing more of the combat stuff. So I've gotten a little bit more experience playing as him, and I do enjoy it. But the reason I'm talking about that, even though it's Rebirth and I'm talking about Remake, or supposed to be, is because I just really like the diversity that with the characters. Like, it feels like there's a legitimate reason to use each of them for different situations. Whereas the original, it was like you kind of got your main three and you stuck with it for pretty much the entire game. At least that's how I played it. Plot-wise, it's hard because like I don't think they could have done it any other way, because this was like the end of Midgar was definitely the best stopping point to give like the first part of a 3-part trilogy for this game, but because they weren't gonna go all the way to where Rebirth ends, which I think is the end of disc 1, because the original is 3 discs, but the last disc is basically just the final boss. They weren't going to do all of that in the first game. If they were going to make a trilogy, it wouldn't have made sense. So I get why, but it also gets a little bit samey. Like, they did the best with what they had to work with, but the environments get very samey, and the plot is very slow. It's very slow moving. And I don't mind it being slower paced. It gives you more time to really get to know these characters, but I could see where like someone playing this for the first time might not enjoy it. Like, it feels like this is mainly a game that was made for people who have already played the original, which is kind of weird almost. Like, it definitely feels like it caters more to the people who have already played the original and already know everything that's going to happen, and how it kind of messes with your expectations a little bit here and there. Sorry, my nose has been itching really bad all of a sudden now that I'm talking. But I originally had the dilemma where I was like, this is legitimately like a 10 out of 10 game for me. But when I know what's coming up ahead, it's hard for me to give it a 10 out of 10 because it feels like it doesn't feel like the full experience. And it's weird because it's a 30-hour game, but it doesn't feel like you're experiencing everything because there's so much more story to be had and much more like introductions to mechanics that will happen in Rebirth and beyond, that it feels weird to like rate Remake on its own. But then we got to, I think it was the second to last chapter. It was either the second or third to last chapter where it's like the entire lab section, Hojo's lab. I despise that chapter with like almost every fiber of my being. I was bored. It was monotonous gameplay wise, and I hated it. Like, Some of the other sections felt a little bloated, like the sewer system, like going through that dungeon. I am not a big fan of like that's kind of a trope in JRPGs. There's a sewer section in Chrono Trigger as well. I'm not a huge fan of that like biome type. Um, but like that was a little bit monotonous for me, but overall the game was still fun in those segments. When we got to this part, um literally what you do is you go to a phone, you keep switching between two different, like you have Aerith and Tifa in one area, and you have Barrett, Cloud, and Red in another, and you have to keep switching between them to open these locks. And when you open the locks, you go through and fight a bunch of enemies, maybe a boss as well. And it took so long that I was like, from the beginning of that chapter up until the fight with Genova, I was like, I just wanted the game to be done. Like I was like ready for it to be over. I thought the end was just around the corner, and then there ended up being like 5 more hours of gameplay left. And it was like the one time where I was like, this is just too much. I wish I could just go fight Genova, do my skirmish with Sephiroth, and be done with the game. But everything from Genova onwards was like peak. Other than I was getting kind of frustrated with the giant whisper boss, just because I barely beat it first try. I was like on the verge of dying multiple times, and I don't know how I made it without dying. But this was like, we were playing it at like 11 or like 10 at night ish, and I think it was a night that I had to get up the next day for school for teaching. But I was like, we're so close. I just have to beat these two bosses and be done with it. But then the boss fight with Sephiroth, I like could not sleep after that because I was like thinking about how cool it was. So the end is very good, but Hojo's lab, like it could have been cut. Like just make me go through one door and fight some enemies, not like 3 or 4 or whatever it was. It took way too long and it was way too bloated. And that section alone just kind of soured me on the game because it was like at the very end almost. Uh, and honestly, like I was thinking about it, like I was saying before, like with the knowledge of what's to come and with the knowledge of where this kind of is in the overall, like if you think about like a plot graph where you have like the rising action and whatnot, it's like, this is like, you aren't even like close to where, like you're through the exposition basically. Like it's like this entire game is the exposition of the original, so it feels weird to like give it a rating. But in my head I'm thinking around an 8.5, 9 out of 10, because it's very crisp and the gameplay is super fun. Like it's some of the most fun I've had playing a video game in a while. And it made it so that I pretty much had to put everything else down because I just wanted to play this game. And the attention to detail is super crazy, like how alive Midgar feels. Like you walk around and you hear like literally every random NPC is having a conversation or saying something, and it's kind of crazy. And they build on it more in Rebirth too. But I give it an 8.5, 9 out of 10, just because it definitely does feel slow at times and very, very bloated compared to the original. And I can see why some haters say like the remake is like a disgrace or whatever, that the original is far better and will never be surpassed. I don't agree with that. I think once the full trilogy comes out, it will stand up and be better overall than the original. But there is something to be said about how expanded they're making it, and the question can be asked whether it's too much or not. So I see the complaints, but I don't agree. I really enjoy Remake. I probably will play it again on hard mode to get the platinum. But I'm working on Rebirth right now, so it'll probably be a while. And that one's much longer. Like, it's hard to believe, not to go on a rambling fest, it's hard to believe her and I played Rebirth for 20 hours. We finished Remake in 30, and we're barely like into chapter 3 on um on Rebirth, and we're going like full completion route, but like it's kind of crazy just how much faster the time passes when you have the whole open world and you're actually exploring around and stuff. Like I am already really liking Rebirth, and something really bad would have to happen for me to for that experience to be soured right now. But we'll see where I stand in like at the end of summer when I finally beat it. But thank you all for watching. I'll see you all next time. Peace out. Oh, this fly. What the heck?